Hey everybody, welcome to the Section B, what is it that the examiners are looking for video. We've got a series of 3 of these. We started with Section A, obviously, where I showed you how to find a document that is called the Expected Qualities. And it's something that you can find. You go ahead and you Google Expected Qualities VCE English Exam, download it and have a look. That's going to be the basis of what we're speaking about today, because when we ask the question, what are the examiners looking for? Why not refer to the document that shows the guiding principles of how your sections are marked? So have that open there in front of you. I'll be putting some of them up there on your screen, and I'm going to be talking you through the comparative section and what it is that you need to make sure that you're doing in order to be getting to those really top marks. So when we take a look at the expected qualities for Section B, we notice that, again, just like Section A, there are 3 different criteria that seem to pop up, and that it is the adjectives that are used around those and some of the terms that are used that improve as we go up. Let's start at the very top here. So the first of them is talking about the understanding of the comparative qualities of the text. So if you notice here down towards the bottom of the ladder, we have these things about, some comparison between the texts. And then at 3, it starts to talk about the awareness of their ideas. Now, this is really key because far too many students go into the exam thinking that if they can just compare how the characters are the same and character experiences are pretty similar and that the plot of either of the texts that they've studied is similar, then they're really engaging in deep comparison. But when we take a look at this, we start to see that as we get to the middle here, and we know that most students will receive a 5 or a 6 when it comes to this, we've got a comparison of a basic grasp of the ideas, an adequate grasp of the ideas, issues, and complexity of the texts. And so I want you to think about what the difference might be there between the 5 and the 6. And that can be a really good exercise for you to really focus yourself towards what is it that I'm really being assessed on here. What is the difference between a basic grasp of the ideas and issues in the text and an adequate grasp of the ideas, issue, and complexity of the texts? I'd argue that what the difference is there is the idea of not just saying, well, they both explore similar ideas and there are similar issues, but actually when we think about the complexity of it, we think about how they say different things about those same ideas. And as we go up here, we get to this term that I use a lot when I'm speaking to students at different schools. And that is this idea of the conceptual complexity of the texts. So I want you to think about what is meant by a concept, the idea of 2 texts. If they share common concepts, it means that they are examining certain ideas. If we talk about conceptual complexity, we're talking about the fact that our comparisons are going to be based on the ideas that are shared by the texts and then the different things and the different elements of that idea that they show in the way that they go about it. And what this means is that there's a huge difference between the students that go in there saying, I've looked at text A and I've looked at text B. Here we go. You've asked me a question. I'm going to give you all this evidence in response to that question for the first text, all of this evidence for the second text. And then at the end, I'll say, so therefore they're similar. That really isn't comparing the ideas of the text. The approach that you want to have and that you should be training yourself for with every practice piece that you write is to be viewing your 2 texts as a pairing. And what I mean by that is looking at them in terms of, right, what is shared? What are the ideas that are shared between these texts? How do they go off in different directions? And how can I show a really great grasp of those things? It is a key separator between students who really flourish in this section and students who really get bogged down with plot. And so as you can see there with the slide, ask yourself, is your piece really engaging with the ideas, issues, and complexity of the texts, knowing that they are the actual descriptive words used in the criteria for the expected qualities? So what that might mean for you is really starting to think about what is shared between the texts, but also knowing that just saying that, okay, both the texts are about leadership or about guilt or about a mob mentality or something like that, doesn't really get you far. It just means that you can observe that. Where we start to actually look at where they diverge and where they go off in different directions, that's where we start to get to really deeper comparative thought. And so that's where your mind needs to be. That difference between showing that you understand what happens in either text towards, and then going more towards showing that you understand where the texts differ in their message, even though they might be concerned with the same central ideas. That's what you want to be practicing. That's what you want to be making sure that you are doing. You want to make sure that you're not getting that confused with showing how much you know of either texts. It's difficult working with two texts in section B, and it's easy for you to write really long overloaded paragraphs and really long essays and struggle to get them done in the 1 hour that you're allotted. And a lot of the times that's because students feel that they have to show how much they know. Remember that nothing in the criteria is saying list how much you know in response to this topic. It's about your ability to compare the ideas. So make that your focus and ensure that that's always what you're heading towards. We see next on the expected qualities that we have the idea of a well-structured piece of writing there at a number 8. That it goes down to an organised piece of writing that demonstrates a comparison and an understanding of the topic, all the way down to this 4 here, attempts a piece of writing that shows basic organisation. So in this regard, you're really being judged on your ability to compose a complete and comprehensive essay. As we can see there, attempting a piece that has minimal organisation is going to see you down here at this 3, maybe a 4. When we start to get towards having an organised piece of writing, so meaning that our paragraphs clearly have this commonly held idea that they are moving towards, that the paragraphs include comparison, and also that the paragraphs are responding to the topic. This is how we start to get further and further up this ladder towards where we get right up the top, and we have this idea of a well-structured piece of writing. So the structure that you're adhering to is allowing you to really get to deep comparisons that presents a thoughtful comparison that grapples with the implications of the topic. Notice how the topic becomes more and more important the further we go up this chain, and that it becomes more a part of what you're being assessed on. It's not easy to compare the texts, to use the evidence from either of them and do so all whilst responding to a topic and then writing a really highly organised piece. So if we're aware of that though, we can start to move towards how we do that best. And just like before, I think one of the smartest things you can start to do is to ditch evidence that isn't helping you make your point and focus on making those directly comparative statements throughout your piece, and ensuring that the comparison is the focus of your piece, not providing lots and lots of evidence, because obviously it doesn't say that anywhere. Finally, we see that it talks about the confident use of language, and that's the bottom criteria for all 3 areas of study, really. And just like I said in the Section A video, which if you haven't seen yet, I really encourage you to go and watch, this is an area where students often feel like they can't improve. They're either good writers by the time they've got to year 12 or they're not, and therefore there's nowhere for them to go. And that's just rubbish. There are ways that you can continue to work with your teacher to get confident with sentence structures, sentence starters, and language that is going to really help you out when it comes to making sure that you can compare. I've put some on the screen right now. Using really basic terms like whilst, coupled with, diverge, similarly, contrast in the manner, contrastingly. These are all, pretty basic terms. I'm sure that no one watching this video is looking at it going, wow, I've never heard the word whilst before or anything like that. But when we start to look at the ways that that language can work, it's allowing us to be really succinct and direct in the way that we compare. Whilst reckoning examines how, whatever it might be, the namesake focuses more on the, and however we might want to finish that. If we want to talk about both texts in the same sentence, we might put in evidence from the crucible, coupled with evidence from the dressmaker, exemplify how. When I was talking to you before about how the sophisticated pieces look at it as a pairing, not as 2 texts, using evidence from either text in the one sentence can be a really great way of doing that. And the more you practice it, the more that it becomes part of your autopilot when you sit down to write these comparative pieces. The texts diverge in the manner in which that's that way of you clicking on to, okay, this is where I'm going to start to talk about the differences. And it means that if you're filling out that sentence, in a correct manner, that you're really engaging in the ideas, that you're not just talking about this is what happens. You'll notice there that after I've put the word similarly, I've then followed the next sentence with however. And that is because far too often students feel like they are being comparative if they just include the word similarly or contrastingly. If you don't go any further with that, that's not really comparing. It's not a comparison to list all the ways that the text A, responds to the topic, and then say similarly, text B does the same thing. That's not really a comparison. So if we're going to say that similarly, there's something shared by the text, we want to be then looking for that word however to say, whilst they're similar, however, they go off in different directions in this way. That can really help us out in making sure that we're really getting to the bottom of it. There's contrast in the manner and contrastingly. These are all sentence structures, and there's plenty more out there, and I'm sure your teacher will be able to help you out with them that can help you be direct, help you be comparative, and help you really access these things as a pairing, not as two separate texts. So what is our focus? And it's hard not to come across as a smart aleck as I say comparing, because of course it's the comparative section. However, you'd be surprised how many students don't actually get to any meaningful comparison when they're writing these pieces. You need to make sure that you're training yourself to always be heading towards some form of comparison, and you want to be doing it multiple times throughout your paragraph. You're not there just to list a whole bunch of evidence and at the end say, and that's why both the texts are the same. The more effective pieces are the ones that are moving towards comparison all the time and consistently finding differences and similarities and ways that they can examine the text in response to the topic, not just putting down a whole bunch of evidence. So your main focus is to have those breakthrough sentences that compare ideas, issues, and complexities of the text. If you're using the topic as a basis for comparison, you're not using it as a keyword just to throw masses of evidence at it. It can be tempting to think, wow, it's asked me about leadership, and I know all these quotes from Ransom about leadership, and I know all these things that happen in the Queen, so if I just put all that down, it'll show that I know heaps about it. Nothing in that criteria talks about how much you know about the text. It's about your understanding of their ideas and the way that you can compare them. So how can you check that when you're doing your own writing here? You want to get out your highlighter and you want to be highlighting any sentences where you are directly comparing the texts. And if that means that you have simply been able to just highlight the word similarly halfway through your paragraph, you can tell yourself that, well, clearly I'm not getting to, the criteria here, and clearly I'm not doing enough. You might surprise yourself in how little comparison there might be in some of your comparative paragraphs. That's fine. It's quite common, actually. So you want to make sure that you're working towards it. Whilst saying this, I don't want you really stressing out thinking, oh my gosh, I can't use evidence at all. Of course you can, and you have to. If we're going to be comparing the ideas of the text, we have to be able to refer to evidence that allows it to do it. But get used to knowing when you've made your point in terms of the evidence. Refer quickly to the evidence, knowing that the comparative and the comparison of what you're going to say based on that evidence is what you're there to write the essay for, not just to put plenty of that down. I hope that this video has really helped you out. We have a comment section that I love to get down there and type responses to, so please make sure you make the most of that. If you haven't had a chance to look at the video on Section A, make sure you do. Also, obviously, the one for Section C. If you're looking for specific evidence and ideas and things that you can use for your comparative paragraphs and your comparative essays for Section B, check out the rest of our channel. We've got plenty of videos there. Until I see you next time, though, all the best with your studying and good luck.